S1E0.
Hola a todos y bienvenidos. Welcome to the Atomicxs podcast, the podcast where curiosity meets science. And nerds of all kinds are not just welcome, they are celebrated. Now, before we jump in, let me introduce myself properly. I'm Ira, a science communicator, engineer, mom, and the host of this podcast. I've spent years in the STEM and public education, but more importantly, I spent a lifetime asking odd questions like, why don't we even hear about this part of the story? I was born and raised between two cultures, Mexico and the US, and my family is a blend of storytellers and everyday philosopher. My maternal grandfather had indigenous roots from Mexico, and while I do not claim indigenous identity, I carry his stories with care, context, and deep respect. Atomicxs is a personal independent project produced through Atomicxs LLC on my own time using publicly available sources and research. This podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by any employer, university, or agency. The views shared here are entirely my own. If I ever say something controversial, consider it a thought experiment. Now, this is a special episode because it's our official Season 1, Episode 0 pilot, Ancestral Legacy, uncovering the forgotten genius of our ancestors. And yes, it's in English, just for today, especially for my fellow Toastmasters around the world. Normally, this podcast will be in Spanish to uplift science in Spanish-speaking audiences. But today's version is designed to open the door to a broader conversation about culture, curiosity, and what it really means to know. Season 1 launches in August 2025, and we couldn't be more excited. This pilot is our way of saying, here's why science matters, why it belongs to everyone, and why reclaiming our scientific legacy might just change how we see the world. And if you're someone who prefers reading or likes citations as much as caffeine, every episode in Spanish from Atomicxs, it will come with a full English companion article on our Substack blog at Atomicxs with X. It's Atomicxs, CXS, substack.com, and you can see the links down here. Whether you speak English, Spanish, perhaps Spanglish like me, or just fluent nerd, you are so welcome here. So, what is Atomicxs about? It's about rediscovering science as something deeply human. We'll explore everything from ancient astronomy to modern physics, and how the stories we tell or we don't tell shape scientific discovery. In episode 1, believe me, I'm very excited about it. We'll dive into one of my favorite topics. I really cannot stop talking about this, and many people that know me, they hope that by the end of the recording of episode 1, I'll stop talking about it. And I'm talking about diving into assembly theory, what it means to be alive from a mathematical perspective. And in future episodes, we'll tackle everything from relativity to cosmology to math, but it's a math way, seeing math in a different way. I just have this different perspective of things that are super weird. So I hope that you're into weird because you're going to have fun, believe me. And season 1 it's kind of gonna help us lay the foundation, right? And perhaps season two, but in the future, we are planning to go further. We want to feature scientists and talking about ideas that haven't yet made it to the mainstream science media. So if you ever felt like science was fascinated, but somehow far away, or wish it felt more like home, this podcast is for you. Welcome to Atomicxs podcast. Let's reclaim science, not as something that belongs to someone else, but as something that has always belonged to all of us. You know, a funny things happen when we talk about science. Like, what do you think when you what do you think when you talk about a scientist? And sometimes the way that you think is, oh, someone wearing a lab coat, someone working in a laboratory, that it has to be clean with a chemistry set, perhaps, like wearing glasses, right? And you think that, and you think those things like at normal. And in some cultures, they see that as normal, like for other people. Like if you see someone scribbling equations, that's okay. Well, not for everyone. And I'm going to tell you a story. And sorry if you hear my dog, but he's annoying and he's with me all the time. He gives me comfort. So he's going to be here with us barking, right? So let me tell you a story. And my dog, by the way, he's been with me in all of these stories that I'm going to tell you. All through college, he's been my emotional support dog. He's been there for me all this time. So obviously for recording, he's going to be here. And if you hear him bark, his name is Sancho and he's a cute mix of an Aussie and a Corgi. So he's very weird looking, but I love him so much. Anyway, this is what happened to me. I'm an engineer and I live in New Mexico because that's where I'm going to college. And I used to live in a house full with pets. And I had obviously Sancho and I had like a million cats. I was literally a cat sitter. So I was taking care of these cats. But I was also working a million jobs, odd jobs. And I had this weird schedule as well because when you go to college, everything is weird. So I was working a lot. And some days I didn't have to work because, you have to put in your schedule in a way that you give yourself some time to study, right? That's going to be really important. Like time management is going to be something really, really important. And I think I was very good at it, at time management. So by doing that, one semester actually, I took too many classes. I think I took, no, because the normal credit hours, I think is 12 credit hours, right? It's a full time. But I think that semester I took 18 credit hours because I was doing two minors. I was doing my minor in math and another minor in Chicano studies, just because I wanted to learn more about the culture in New Mexico, especially ancient cultures in New Mexico. Wanted to feel connected to the city and the place that opened, the doors for me. I was gonna live there, so I really wanted it to immerse myself, learn more, and adapt to this place. So I'm like, I need to learn more about the culture of New Mexico. It's a very beautiful and interesting culture. I love their pottery and everything. So I was very into that as well. And but let me tell you, I'm Hispanic, so I don't like to say that, not just because I don't like to be controversial, but I already said that I might be controversial, right? Anyways, so I blend in there very well in a way. But for my family, like I was the first one going to college, right? So when you are a first gen, they don't know, they don't understand. And it's just really interesting because people just don't understand what you're doing. They were like, what are you even studying? right? Because I started in the astrophysics program and then I switched to engineering because I thought, I'm more like an engineer. I like to build things, put things together. So, but I also like math and science. So I decided to become an engineer instead. After spending many years in the astrophysics program, I decided to switch to engineering, but it was all fun. Anyways, I started this semester. This was a really hard semester because I was taking really advanced classes. It was not just, your first 2 years of college. I was already a junior and I switched to another completely different degree. And it was really interesting because I was still able to use some of my math right there. And the thing that happened is that one day during this semester, I was in my living room, and in my living room, imagine this, I have this couch, and just I sit there, and in front of me, you can see the sliding door because it's the living room. And then on the dining room, which is gonna be to my left, I had some whiteboards on both walls. So, and they were really big whiteboards. Nerd alert, right? I know. Because I need it, right? Like you need those things and you need to, I always write a lot. Anyways, my strategy when I'm thinking about it and solving a problem is to, you have to work on the math. Like there's a lot of math problems that you're going to encounter in engineering, right? And also when I was doing astro, even more, you have to do all these proofs and whatnot. But so I use my whiteboards, and sometimes for some reason, I don't know why, I run out of space with those gigantic whiteboards that I had. Like they were so big and I still run out of space. So I decided I need to use my sliding door. I will use my sliding door. It was like this 3-panel sliding door, and I will use everything. Everything. I know it's crazy. Who does that? I know some of you have done that, so don't judge me. Anyways, sometimes because I was so busy working many jobs, I was doing research, I was going to college, and then I had my dog that is so needy. Sometimes I needed to ask for some help, and I will call some Mexican ladies to come and help me clean my house. So they will come over. And one day she came to my house, and that night I was studying like all night, right? Like from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So I really didn't look okay, right? So this lady comes and she almost calls 911 because when she came to the house, because I was not picking up the phone, and I'm sorry, I'm so bad at picking up the phone, like literally so bad. When I'm in the zone, I'm in the zone and nothing can distract me at all, right? Except my dog. But I was in the zone. I was not answering phones because she was coming over, but she had a key. So I was like, I'm not even worried about that. So she comes in, and I'm there sitting like I don't know, I'm meditating, my eyes closed, sitting on the couch with my hands in front of my face, moving them around because I like to, when I think about problems, I also like to visualize them. And I move my hands in front of my face for some reason. I don't know, like I do weird things. So when she comes in, I just didn't hear. I was in the zone and I'm moving my hands. And this lady sees all the scribbling, not only in the whiteboards, but in the sliding doors. And then sees me doing that. Like she got really scared. Believe me, it was a very scary situation for her. She almost called 911 because also when I'm in the zone, sometimes people try talking to me and I don't hear. For some reason, I go so in depth into what I'm doing that I don't hear nothing. And I remember one time someone had to even like shook my shoulders because, hey, like, what are you doing? I'm so in depth in my thoughts that you cannot even, like, I will not hear you at all. And a lot of people have told me, oh my God, she's ignoring me. And I'm literally not ignoring you. I'm in the zone. I'm in the zone. And that happened to me not only once, more than one time. More than one time since I was a child. I was a very weird, different child growing up. So then I had, and the second time that this happened, I mean, she didn't, this lady didn't ended up calling 911, but she ended up being very, very worried about me to the point that I thought that she will never come and help me out cleaning my house ever again, but she did. But she kind of stopped later on. I think she thought that I was crazy or something. I don't know, because they see me and they don't think I can be an engineer or a scientist, right? Like when you see someone, you see, okay, it's acceptable for them to be like that, but it's not acceptable for maybe other people to be like that. And I'm like, we need to change that. So the second time that that happened, like my family, they already know I'm weird, right? It happened to my mom. And it's a very similar situation, but this time I was working. I had an actual job for the summer. So for this job, I moved to another city and I invited my mom to come over with me. I miss my mom sometimes and I wanted it to be there with me. But I always tell them, please, please don't judge me or don't be afraid. I don't know. But I'm away from my house and I don't have my whiteboards. I need to see things big for some reason. I'm very visual. And like I said, I always do this thing when I move my hands. Sometimes I'm just talking to myself, like thinking, modeling my imaginary 3D thing with my hands or with my brain. And that's how I work. So for this job, I have to do something like I have to make a proof using DFQs, differential equations, right? But also in some of the proofings that you work on, I was trying to make sure that my proof was right. So I was using Laplace transforms, right? And by doing that, it took me like some time, right? Because I had a minor in math, but I'm not a mathematician, right? So this is what I did. What I did was to I started using the mirror because I had a sliding door, but it was very small, and the mirror was like a sliding door mirror for the closet, so I decided to use that. And I was writing everything in it, all my proofs and everything, and then my mom opens the door to my room and she sees that. And she's like, "What are you doing? Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay. Why would I not be okay? Like, this is my work." And my mom, "But what are you doing in your job?" Because she saw all this scribble in the mirror and she got really scared. She thought that I went insane. And I'm like, "No, this is part of my job. Like, my job is I need to think." I was also doing a lot of coding, and programmers know how that is, right? Especially Fortran, especially Fortran. So, and I was also doing, this is I'm going to rant a little bit. Bear with me. Visual Basic. What the heck? What the heck, right? Thank you. Thank you for understanding. But my mom was completely like, why is my daughter, my Hispanic daughter, scribbling equations on a mirror, sitting there and observing them and talking to them? And then she goes to a computer and it looks like the Matrix, right? Obviously, some people are not used to that and they're going to be worried. So we need to make this like a little bit more normal, right? This is a new era of where we use computers, we code, and we use math, right? But, maybe some people need to start getting used to this. And maybe this will allow us to, for some other people that have an interest in science, so they can have more support. Where am I going with all of these stories? The thing is that what I'm trying to say is that curiosity is not exclusive, right? It doesn't belong to one region, to one culture, to one century, or one classroom. It's universal. And you don't need to inherit it. You just need to notice something strange and start asking why. For example, when I was growing up, I learned the usual grades: Galileo, Kepler, Darwin, Curie, my girl MC, I love her. No argument there that they were brilliant, right? But it always felt like other civilizations didn't even get a guest appearance. And I asked myself, is that really the full picture? Is that really the whole story? Turns out that not even close. Archaeologist Ed Barnhart put it best. Many complex achievements across the Americas. They had advanced math, water engineering, chemistry. All those achievements have long been overlooked or not called science, even when they met the definition. And let's talk about the Maya. They weren't just sky gazers. They were serious timekeepers. Oh my God, I'm so obsessed with them. There are three amazing calendars that they have, interconnected calendars, not only looking very far away in time, very far away in the past, very far away in the future, thousands of years. They also have their version of the solar calendar, but they also started looking inward, right? That was one of the few civilizations that had a gestational calendar attached to their other two calendars. And I think that's unique and that's amazing. And let's not forget the Hopewell culture in what is now Ohio. The Newark earthworks, they form a geometrical and astronomical complex aligned with lunar cycles on a scale that suggests this big, huge engineering marvel. And they were deeply integrated with cosmology. And in New Mexico, I love New Mexico. I'm going to tell you, I'm obsessed with New Mexico. I've been in this place, Chaco Canyon, and I love the Chacoan people. They constructed buildings oriented to solar and lunar events, carrying heavy timbers across great distances and organizing architecture in ways that some believe mirror a map of the heavens. Here's what that tells us: that science doesn't always look the way we expect. Sometimes it's written in codices, carved into canyon walls, or aligned with moonrises. When we begin to recognize these patterns as scientific achievements, not just ritual or a myth, we begin to expand the story of human knowledge itself. This is not about rewriting anyone out. It's about writing more people in. These were not primitive cultures. They were observers, builders, and problem solvers. In other words, scientists. And maybe the reason these stories are less known is not because the knowledge was lost, but because it was not always recognized. So in this episode, we are not assigning credit. We are inviting curiosity. We are not here to debate who did what better. We are here to say, wow, look at what humans figured out everywhere. Now I want to start diving deeper. And I have this curious observation. Why is it that we often hear about the scientific legacy of civilizations like Greece, Rome, or Egypt, but less so about the achievements of the broader American continent? Take the Maya pyramids, for example. I think there's a joke out there where they make fun of the pyramids in Egypt and they say that aliens built them, but when it comes to the pyramids in Mexico, they know they built them, because Mexicans built a lot of infrastructure in the United States or something like that. I don't know. That's a little funny, I will say, but I want to say that, in a way, it's encouraging that we recognize that people, resourceful, brilliant, and creative people have been doing remarkable things for a long time. But having this conversation or shifting the conversation to other cultures and saying that, probably they didn't build their pyramids, but having aliens or something like that, I think that's not fair for them, right? Because across the globe, Africa, Asia, the Middle East, Europe, and the Americas, civilizations have been solving engineering puzzles and aligning their structures with the sky for thousands of years. So, what makes some of those stories stick while others get less airtime? And that's not a trick question. It's an invitation to look closer, think deeper, and stay curious. You know, the way that we talk about science today has a lot to do with how it's been taught. For many of us, science seemed to start with a handful of well known European thinkers like Galileo, Newton, Darwin, names that deserve respect, no doubt. But the story often begins there, as if no one else was experimenting, building, or discovering anything until the Enlightenment. And that's not a criticism, it's just an observation because the truth is, long before the word science existed, people all over the world were already doing it. They were tracking the stars, mapping the seasons, managing ecosystems, developing medicines, and passing that knowledge through calendars, also through carvings and through stories. They were using what they had: careful observation, trial and error, and a good amount of persistence. In other words, the scientific method, just without a lab coat. And you don't need a PhD or a research grant to be a scientist, even though I'm doing my PhD. Don't judge me, I like to suffer. The only thing that you need is curiosity, creativity, and the courage to ask questions that might not have easy answers. So, this is not just about adding names to a list. It's about recognizing that science is not the property of any one culture or moment in history. It's a shared human inheritance, and that's richer, deeper, and more diverse than most of us were ever taught. Because when we expand the story, we don't lose anything, we gain perspective. Science didn't begin in one place or belong to one culture. It's a human instinct. And you'll find it in the hands of builders, in the timing of harvests, in the eyes of sky watchers charting the stars. It lives in the logic of engineers, the touch of midwives, and the memory of storytellers. Across time and continents, people have always tried to make sure or make sense of the world, to test, to measure, to understand. So maybe instead of narrowing the definition of science, we can widen the lens because the more perspectives we include, the clearer the picture becomes. The joy of discovery is the most beautiful thing we can experience. And that joy, it's for everyone. So let's move on and let's start doing this imaginary trip. Like I told you, I like to imagine things all the time. So stay with me and start imagining this trip with me. And imagine that we are now in what is central Mexico, a place called the Tehuacan Valley. The year? Around 7900 BCE. Over there is hot, it's dry, and water isn't exactly falling from the sky. So what do people do? They adapt with ingenuity. Adaptation is really important. Early communities in the Tehuacan Valley developed one of the most sophisticated water management systems in the pre-Hispanic Mesoamerica. They did not wait for the rain. They carved channels into bedrock, built terrace systems, and created durable irrigation canals using nothing more than stone tools and an understanding of the landscape. These were not small projects. We're talking about coordinated efforts across communities, some involving dams, aqueducts, and stone-lined canals that still exist in fossilized form more than 2 millennia later. And here's what's truly remarkable. Some of these ancient strategies are being studied and they're being studied now, and in some cases, revived by local communities facing modern water shortages. Will this work in Arizona and New Mexico? Well, not New Mexico, Nevada. Not because of nostalgia. They are not reviving this because, we want to bring this back. No, because they work. And they work now. These systems were efficient, sustainable, and adapted to local conditions, something modern infrastructure doesn't always manage. We often think of technological progress as a straight line. Newer means better, right? But sometimes the smartest things that we can do is to look back and ask, what did they know that we forgot? And in a world facing increasing water stress, the legacy of the Tehuacan engineers offers not just historical insight, but practical tools for the future. And these weren't just ancient solutions. They were systems thinking in action, designed for resilience, cooperation, and sustainability. And I think that is awesome. And a lot of places in the United States and perhaps other places in the world might be able to use these systems, this ancient technology. Now, let's move our time traveling stroll to another place. Monte Alban, Oaxaca, Mexico. It's 500 BCE, and you are a Zapotec engineer or architect. You've got a great hilltop view, and you're not just building temples. You're aligning structures to the stars, literally. One building in particular, Building J, was designed with precise celestial alignments. Researchers believe it lines up with the stars like Capella and Aldebaran, which likely held significance for seasonal events or ceremonial calendars. And speaking of calendars, the Zapotecs did not mess around. They used both a 260-day ritual calendar and a 365-day solar one. Because who wants to miss a festival due to poor math, right? They weren't just architects. They were cosmologists with limestone and vision. Now, for our next stop, Tiwanaku, Bolivia, near Lake Titicaca. Lake Titicaca, I like it. Between 500 and 1000 CE, this high-altitude city became a hub of monumental architecture and astronomy. The famous Gateway of the Sun, carved from a single block of stone, may have served calendrical or ritual functions. Its alignment and glyphs are still the subject of active academic debate. Even cooler, Tiwanaku engineers developed agricultural systems so advanced they created microclimates to protect crops from frost, unlike my failed greenhouse system where I created not a microclimate but a tornado. They had these raised fields with adjacent canals and improved drainage and thermal retention. Basically, ancient climate adaptation. Better than what I had. And modern sustainability experts take note. They say that this wasn't primitive irrigation. This was adaptive systems engineering with mud, sun, and thousands of years of observational data. We need that data to feed it into AI, don't you think? Onward to the Nazca Desert, Peru, one of the driest places on Earth. Is this drier than Idaho? Why don't we go there and take a look? There, the Nazca civilization, 100 BCE to 800 CE, constructed the Puquios, an underground network of aqueducts accessing deep aquifers. These spiraling shafts, called ojos, eyes in English, provided ventilation and maintenance access. These aqueducts were so effective that some are still in use today. Take that. It's been compared to Persians' Qanat systems, but these are homegrown innovations responding to arid extremes. When water is life, hydraulic engineering becomes sacred work. Now, let's head to El Paraíso, the paradise, in the Chillón Valley near Lima, Peru, dating back to 2300 BCE. This late pre-ceramic site includes platform mounds and plazas. The people here used xicras, wooden bags filled with rocks, to stabilize stone walls, revealing early seismic adaptation. El Paraíso is one of the oldest examples of urban design in the Americas. And while there's still debate about its primary function, it's agreed that this wasn't a random pile of rocks. It was intentional, communal, and incredibly sophisticated for its time. Jumping north to Cahokia, Illinois. Right here in what's now the United States, we find a city that flourished around 1100 CE. With a population possibly reaching 20,000, Cahokia was larger than many European cities at the time. Its Monk's Mound remains the largest prehistoric earthwork in the Americas. The city also featured Woodhenge, a timber circle functioning as a solar calendar. Posts aligned with solstices and equinoxes, showing astronomical precision. Cahokia's urban layout, trade networks, and cultural complexity point to a vibrant, hierarchical society deeply in tune with both land and sky. For our last stop, Palenque, Chiapas, Mexico. The Maya here weren't just carving myths into stone. They were directing water like prose. Their Piedras Bolas aqueduct is the earliest known example of engineered water pressure in the New World, potentially powering fountains and other water features. Their city design, including aqueducts, canals, and reservoirs, making Palenque a showcase of pre-modern urban planning grounded in environmental engineering. These examples aren't myths. They are not sci-fi fantasies or fringe theories. They are well-documented case studies in architecture, astronomy, and sustainability based on peer-reviewed research and archaeological evidence. And the takeaway? These weren't people behind the times. They were right on time, using the tools of their environment, guided by observation, cooperation, and cosmic curiosity. We are not rewriting history. We are rereading it with respect that deserves. So what does this all mean for us here now? Well, it means that when a girl from Cusco or a boy from El Salvador or a curious teen in Albuquerque walks into a planetarium, they're not just looking up at unfamiliar stars. They're reconnecting with a legacy that's older than telescopes and longer than textbooks. They're not entering science. They are returning to it. You see, science isn't something new being handed to them. It's something that already belongs to them, written in stories, carved in stone, aligned in pyramids, measured in maize fields, and passed down in ways that often didn't come with footnotes. Let's say this clearly. If you have roots anywhere, from the Arctic to Patagonia, Indigenous, Latino, Mestizo, Afro-descendant, or any beautiful mix, you don't have to ask permission to be curious. You don't have to wait to be included. You already are. Because science, it's not just in the future. It's in your history. It might even be in your grandma's weather prediction, in your cousin's way of fixing a radio with duct tape and a tortilla press. Okay, maybe not the tortilla press, but you get the point. The truth is, scientific thinking, observing, experimenting, building, predicting, has existed in every culture. But somewhere along the way, we narrowed the lens. We told a partial story. And that partial story made a lot of people feel like they were outsiders to something they've actually always belonged to. And that's why this episode, to widen the lens, to tell the fuller story, and to remind you, whether you're from whoever you are, anywhere in this beautiful world, science is not a foreign language. It's in your native curiosity, finally coming home. The next time that you walk into a lab, a museum, or you stare up at the night sky and wonder something weird like, what is dark matter anyway? Don't ever think you are intruding. You are participating. You are inheriting. You are continuing a legacy. And we are just getting started. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about something that, many people are not going to like. I know. I'm sorry. Not that I'm not sorry. But have you ever heard someone say with a straight face, well, the pyramids were obviously built by aliens, and you think, really? We've decoded genomes, built quantum computers, and sent robots to Mars. But we can't credit ancient humans with stacking rocks? Look, I'm not trying to ruin anyone's favorite History Channel binge, but science isn't about the fanciest story. It's about the most testable one. See, science is more than just facts. It's a way of thinking, and it is built in a habit of asking questions like, how do we know that? And then follow up, can we check on that? That's what makes it beautiful. It's the ultimate invitation to doubt and then to learn. Now, misinformation, don't even get me on that topic. I really don't like to talk about this because people don't like it. People really don't like it. And I know that's a different beast because misinformation travels to the speed of light. It also sounds exciting, and it never asks you to do the hard part, like checking sources or thinking twice. It's the intellectual version of fast food. Feels good going down, but leaves you nutritionally bankrupt. A recent study found that false claims on social media spread faster and farther than verified facts by about 70%. And no, it wasn't all bots because you may claim, oh, bots do that. It wasn't. It was people because they removed that data from it. So it was us, humans, because like the telenovelas I love, other people also love a spicy headline. And it gets worse when the misinformation lands on ancient civilizations like the Maya, the Apotecs, the builders of Tiwanaku, Folks with stone tools, yes, but also with lunar calendars, zero-based math and hydraulic system. And yet, when we see their work, we say aliens did it or other things. I don't know. We say weird things. And that's not just bad. That's a form of cultural erasure, and that's really not being respectful for these civilizations or even for us as humans, right? So here's the deal. Pseudoscience thrives in vague language. It has emotional hooks and logical fallacies. And let me tell you a very, very common one, for instance. This one I like. They appeal to ignorance. And it goes like this. Well, you can't prove it didn't happen, so it must be true. But that statement, that's not proof. That's a magician's trick, right? Because you can prove I'm not an interdimensional time traveler either, but don't go rewriting history books just yet, right? If I say that, that doesn't mean that I am a interdimensional time traveler, right? And let's not forget anecdotal evidence. Like saying, I don't know, my uncle saw Bigfoot behind a Taco Bell. That's not data. It's Taco Tuesday gone weird. And science demands patterns. It wants replication. It wants the boring, hard to fake stuff. And that's the stuff that we don't like. Now, here's an interesting thing. A study from 2023 showed that people with a stronger scientific reasoning in what researchers lovingly call the bullshit sensitivity, this is a thing actually, they were way less likely to fall for pseudoscience. And then there's another study. Just making people think a tiny bit harder by solving logic puzzles or even reading, weird fonts, it helped them reduce their belief in conspiracy theories. Turns out that thinking works even when it's uncomfortable, especially then. So what's the antidote to misinformation? Critical thinking. That doesn't mean distrusting everything, right? It means that we need to start questioning things with intention. It means staying curious and rigorous at the same time, not cynical, not dismissive, just honest. Because here's what I believe. The truth is beautiful enough on its own. No aliens needed. Just people. Curious, clever, fallible people. Trying to figure things out. Kind of like you and me. Right? So I will say this. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself. And you are the easiest person to fool. I think Feynman said that, right? So let's stay sharp. Let's keep asking questions. Let's keep checking our assumptions. And above all, let's stay human while we do it. For thousands of years, human communities across the Americas developed precise and practical ways of managing their environments. We are talking about sophisticated farming systems, sustainable resource management, and ingenious architectural feats based on repeated observation and intergenerational refinement. None of it was magic. It was science, just not always labeled that way. Take agriculture, for example. Many indigenous farming techniques, such as polycultures and agroforestry, are now being reevaluated by scientists for their resilience in the face of climate change and soil degradation. The same goes for biochar, which modern researchers are studying for its carbon capture properties. Yet, it's been used in the Amazon for centuries. This body of knowledge is often referred to in literature as traditional ecological knowledge, tech, and today it's not just being preserved. It's influencing global policy and biodiversity frameworks. But now I know what you're thinking. What about AI? If you're thinking and wondering the same thing as me, and wondering what Maya astronomy might have to do with artificial intelligence or machine learning, let me tell you. At the heart of AI is pattern recognition. And that's something ancient cultures excelled at. The Maya, for example, tracked planetary movements with uncanny accuracy across generations using the sky as a data set. That's not mystical, that's methodical. Indigenous cosmologies like Teotl, Inagua philosophy, or Pacha in the Andes aren't scientific frameworks in the Western sense, but they offer alternative models of understanding systems and relationships. These frameworks are increasingly discussed in cognitive science and philosophy of science, especially when exploring nonlinear holistic worldviews. To be clear, we are not saying indigenous metaphysics predictive quantum physics, but they raise fascinating questions about systems thinking and interconnectedness that are gaining attention in modern research. In fact, a 2022 report by the International Science Council made it official. The future of science will need to include plural knowledge system to stay relevant in a multipolar world. In other words, modern innovation might benefit from more context, not just more code. Already, researchers are using machine learning to decode quipus, those knotted strings used by the Inca to store information. Others are designing sustainable farming models based on ancient milpa systems. And yes, the Amazonian soil still outperforming modern fertilizers in some studies. As quantum computing matures, we may find that certain ancient metaphors like cyclical time or embedded consciousness help us think differently about systems we don't fully understand yet. This is not about turning back the clock. It's about broadening the lens. The next leap forward won't come just from better chips or faster servers. It may come from finally integrating the wisdom of the past into the logic of the future. Okay, now let's bring this full circle. If you think everything we talk about so far is ancient history, let's think again. Because right now, scientists across the Americas are doing what they've always done: observing, experimenting, building, healing. Only now, it's with particle accelerators, climate models, and AI code bases. Take Dr. Jessica Hernandez, Zapotec and Chorti Maya, who blends indigenous science with Western ecology to tackle climate change, restoring ecosystems with knowledge passed down through generations. Or Dr. Cesar Terrer from Peru, who is using AI at MIT to predict carbon cycles and help humanity deal with the mess we've made. And that's just the start. Dr. Joe Gon is reshaping mental health research by honoring indigenous views of mind and spirit. Dr. Tiaraona Low Dog brings ancestral botanical knowledge to evidence-based medicine. And Dr. Roberto Delgado, of Raramuri descendant, is leading NIH initiatives on culturally rooted wellness frameworks. These scientists aren't just included in STEM. They are shaping the questions we ask and the tools we use to answer them. But let's be honest, some people are still outnumbered. Pew Research Center reports that Latinos hold just 8% of STEM jobs in the US, despite being nearly 19% of the population. Indigenous scientists, even less represented. And it's not about talent. It's about visibility, mentorship, and structural access. That's why it matters to tell these stories, not as exceptions, but as evidence of a much larger legacy in motion. Now, let's take, for instance, artificial intelligence as a starting point. In recent years, some indigenous scholars and technologies like Dr. Angie Abdila had explored how kinship-based frameworks can inform ethical AI design. These models emphasize relationships, responsibility, and reciprocity over purely extractive data collection, offering an alternative way to approach algorithmic development and bias mitigation. While these approaches are still emerging in academic and design circles, they highlight the potential for broader ethical conversations in tech. In the field of consciousness studies, some researchers are revisiting concepts that have long existed in indigenous knowledge systems, such as the idea that plants may exhibit forms of intelligence or that dreams can function as tools for information gathering and healing. While these views were historically marginalized in mainstream science, they are increasingly being considered within the scope of interdisciplinary research in neuroscience, ethnobotany, and quantum cognition. To be clear, this doesn't imply equivalency between symbolic knowledge and empirical methods. It means recognizing potential value in diverse ways of understanding experience. Even in space ethics and planetary exploration, there is a growing interest in cosmologies that frame Earth not as an object to conquer, but as a relative to care for. Authors like Tucker and Grimm suggest that these relational worldviews can enrich discussion around sustainability and planetary stewardship, particularly in the face of climate change and extraterrestrial development. These perspectives aren't intended to replace established scientific methods, of course not. Rather, they invite us to expand the conversation towards science that is not only rigorous but also inclusive, imaginative, and better aligned with ethical challenges of our time. So, now that we have this information, AI learn not just from datasets, but from traditional ecological knowledge, where data ethics includes community sovereignty, where climate science listens not just to satellites, but to the soil. And that is poetic, right? That future that we are talking about, that future, let me tell you, is already here. AI ethics and indigenous data governance are on the rise. Neuroscience is starting to explore holistic models of cognition. Agri-tech startups are borrowing from ancient systems like the milpa and the raised fields of Tiwanaku. In fact, one report from the International Science Council argued that science innovation in the 21st century depends on including plural knowledge systems to stay relevant in a changing world. And I couldn't agree more. The next wave of progress isn't about coding faster. It's about thinking wider. Because real innovation is what happens when you mix a telescope with a worldview. So now, science at its core, it's about curiosity. It's the art of asking really good questions and the humility to accept surprising answers, even when they challenge what we thought we knew. And here's the important part. Some of humanity's most insightful questions and observations emerge right here in the Americas. This is not about romanticizing the past or making historical claims beyond the evidence. It's about recognizing that knowledge systems rooted in observation, experimentation, and refinement existed and still exist outside of what's often taught in mainstream Western science curricula. Acknowledging these contributions is not just a matter of historical justice or whatever you want to call it. It's practical. In a world facing the intersecting challenges of climate change, AI governance, and ecological collapse, we need every proven approach available. Many Indigenous or Latino or frameworks from the ancient America offer powerful insights into systems thinking, sustainability, and ethical relationships with land, water, and community. These values are not alternative, they are deeply pragmatic and increasingly validated by contemporary research. Integrating diverse cultural values like respect, reciprocity, and long term stewardship into how we develop technology today doesn't replace Western science. It broadens the lens. It helps us build tools and systems that are more robust and ultimately more human. So, I also want to say something. Here's the thing, you guys. This isn't a competition of, us versus them. I think this is about all of us coexisting on a vast and diverse continent and a vast and diverse world with layered histories, shared challenges, and interconnected futures. Yes, the past holds pain. The legacy of colonization disrupted countless liveways and communities. But even in that history, we also find moments of cultural exchange, resiliency, and human complexity. Early accounts describe how the Taino peoples approach first contact with openness. The Mexica practiced sophisticated diplomacy. The Arawak shared medicinal knowledge rooted in generation of ecological observations. These acts were driven by hospitality, strategy, or necessity. But there's something true about them. They reflect the depth of human experience. Today, we stand at a crossroads. We can remain divided by inherited wounds, or we can choose a path of learning, reconciliation, and forward motion, especially in this world today. That doesn't mean ignoring the past. It means understanding it deeply and using that understanding to shape something better. Science. Real science isn't just equation and experiments. It's also a way to see the world. It's the frameworks we use to ask questions and make sense of what we observe. And many indigenous knowledge systems offer powerful ethical insights grounded in reciprocity, interdependence, and long-term solutions. These are not in conflict with modern science. They are complementary lenses. This isn't about rewriting science, guys. It's about rewriting ourselves back into it. Because when we say science belongs to everyone, we must also mean the people whose contributions were historically overlooked or erased, right? Whether your roots are in Bolivia or Quebec, whether your family speaks Quechua or Nahuatl or English or Spanish or Portuguese, this intellectual heritage is part of the human story. And today, more than ever, we need all of it. So let's take a moment to rethink how we define progress. When we train artificial intelligence on narrow monocultural data sets, the results mirror those limitations. The same goes for how we build cities, design healthcare systems, or define consciousness. We tend to start from a single lens and call it universal. But what if we didn't? What if we integrate other worldviews? For example, approaching knowledge not just as information to collect, but as a relationship to uphold. This ethic of responsibility, long-term care, offers profound insight into how we might design future technologies. It invites us to ask, what would artificial intelligence look like if it were built on a model of kinship instead of conquest? What might neuroscience discover if it engaged with dream logic, plant intelligence, or cosmologies that treat land as sentient? These aren't speculative ideas. They are emerging conversation across fields like AI ethics, planetary stewardship, and consciousness studies. And they matter because when we broaden the intellectual source code, we get better results, more context, more creativity, fewer blind spots. Consider the young scientists across the Americas working in mountain villages, desert communities, and border towns. Many are already blending ancestral knowledge with digital tools, climate modeling, and biomedical innovation. And these efforts aren't happening in spite of tradition. They are happening because of it. Investing in community science, STEM education, maybe bilingual STEM education, and Indigenous-led research centers isn't just about inclusion. It's about improving outcomes. We know from research that culturally responsive learning environments increase retention, performance, and long-term engagement in STEM fields. We know that Indigenous ecological knowledge contributes to biodiversity protection and climate resilience. And we know that when communities are empowered to define and protect their own data, the results are more ethical and more sustainable. None of this replaces the value of Western science. It just simply expands the knowledge because the future doesn't need fewer frameworks. It needs more. It needs curiosity that listens before it solves. It needs science with memory, science with heart. Because we are people. We are not machines. So when someone asks whether this perspective is too political, remind them, recognizing underrepresented knowledge system is not a political act. It's a scientific addition. When someone says it undermines traditional science, remind them, the scientific method does not belong to one group. It belongs to the humans to wonder and understand. And when someone says this is not relevant, just point to the climate, the data, the algorithmic bias. Relevance isn't the issue. Urgency is. Not by replacing what we know, because we are not here to replace what we know. We are here to completing it. Not by looking in just one direction, but by looking everywhere. Because science isn't a relic. It's a growing tree, and its roots are deeper, older, and more entangled than most textbooks will tell you. Let's nurture it. Let's broaden it, and let's keep it curious, and let's keep it ours. And that's it for today's episode of Atomicxs podcast, where curiosity meets science and ancient wisdom gets a seat at the table. Season 1 officially launches in August 2025, and it's going to be a ride. From cosmic questions to cultural perspectives to the weird, wonderful edges of what we call reality. In the meantime, stay curious with us. Subscribe to the blog and get the full companion article with all the juicy citations, Atomicxs with x.substack.com. Follow along on Instagram for reels, quotes, fun facts, and behind-the-scenes science storytelling at Atomicxs.podcast or my personal science page at mujernuclear.real. if this episode sparks something, leave a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. It helps more people find the show, and it makes my caffeine-fueled research sessions feel worth it. Got a question on an idea, or wait, why didn't anyone ever teach me this moment? Send it to hello@atom-collab.com. Tag us while you're listening at Atomicxs.podcast and use the hashtag Atomicxs which just might feature your question or comment in a future episode. I'm Ira, yes, just Ira, and I'll see you in August.